Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I am Jason Mozo, the Senior Vice President for the Florida Chamber Safety Council, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time and joining us here this morning. Today's webinar is focused on avoiding workplace heat-related illnesses, fatalities, and OSHA liability. Leading the webinar, we have Ed Falk, former head of OSHA and member of the Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet Advisory Board. We know that you will all walk away with valuable information in order to keep you and your employees safe in the workplace. The Florida Chamber Safety Council was launched in the summer of 2020 with the mission of making Florida the safest, healthiest, and most sustainable state in America. We are grateful to our advisory board of leading statewide companies for providing us with the best practices and helping to make Florida a national model for workplace safety. Here on your screen, you'll see just a sample of some of the customized on-site trainings that we offer. Our trainers are fully qualified and certified experts in their respective fields of safety and health. If you are in need of any safety or health trainings, please reach out to me and we can schedule a time to come to your facility to conduct these training classes. In addition to our private training offerings, we also offer public training courses, which are unique safety trainings that can be taken conveniently from home or work with our virtual offerings. With a focus on mental health, we are offering a suicide prevention training this Friday, April 12th, which is called QPR training. It is a 1.5-hour training class, and it can help make the difference of you saving someone's life who may be going through a difficult time. We have a few more seats open for this class, and the last day to register is today at 5 p.m. Please visit our website at flchambersafety.com/learn in order to learn more about these courses and register for any of the classes that you may be interested in. Once again, we are thrilled to offer additional public safety courses at our 2024 Leadership Conference on Safety, Health, and Sustainability. These courses will be held at the Disney Contemporary Resort on May 8th. They are the perfect opportunity for professional development for you and your team before attending the leadership conference. One of these courses offered is heat stress, which will fall in line with what we are going to be discussing today in our webinar in order to better prepare you out in the workplace when it comes to potential heat stress hazards. So please register today for our heat stress prevention training. We are thrilled to welcome 23 Olympic gold medalist and mental health advocate Michael Phelps as our opening keynote speaker. This conference is the nation's only event of its kind that is dedicated to helping you and your company move the needle on safety, health, and sustainability. It is the premier event here in Florida where leaders are ready to learn how to affect lasting excellence in the 3 pillars essential to workplace success. We invite you to scan the QR code on your screen in order to learn more about our conference and to register. We look forward to seeing you there. I would like to personally welcome some of our newest Florida Chamber Safety Council members. Last year, we launched this new membership program for the Florida Chamber Safety Council. We know how difficult it can be for an HR director or an operations manager to also juggle safety for a business, which is why the Florida Chamber Safety Council wants to serve as your safety department and partner in staying compliant and keeping your team safe. You can choose from 3 membership levels: advocate, leader, and champion. Each level includes 24/7 safety support, a safety council orientation, and a complete annual risk evaluation, which is completely confidential. Then, based off of the level of your choice, you can choose from a list of safety training courses that can be taken either in person or virtually, which is included in your membership. You will always receive a discount on any other safety trainings booked in addition to those that's included with your membership level, therefore saving you a lot of money. Please be sure to check out more on our website or reach out to me directly if this membership program is right for your business. As we continue growing and expanding our services, the Florida Chamber Safety Council is partnering with national leading companies providing high-quality safety supplies. We are here as a resource to better provide you with supplies and solutions to establish a healthier and safer workplace. If there is anything that you may need, or if you have any questions regarding providing certain safety supplies and solutions to your employees, please do not hesitate to contact me at any time. In addition to these services, we also offer confidential workplace safety and health risk evaluations and mock OSHA inspections, which are very confidential. And if you're interested in having us come out to assure that you are establishing a safer workplace and making sure that you're in compliance, please reach out to me at any time. Without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to turn the program over to Florida Chamber Leadership Cabinet member Ed Falk. Ed is the only attorney in the country that is confirmed by the U.S. Senate to run OSHA. He is currently a partner at Fisher Phillips and also serves as president of Fisher Phillips Safety Solutions, LLC. Prior to joining Fisher Phillips, Ed was the Assistant Secretary of Labor for the Occupational Safety and Health, named by President George W. Bush, serving from April 2006 to November 2008. During his tenure at OSHA, workplace injury, illnesses, and fatality rates dropped at their lowest levels in recorded history. For more than 30 years, Ed has worked in the labor and employment area, focusing on occupational safety and health issues, workplace violent risk assessment and prevention, whistleblower protection, and accident and fatality preventions. He is recognized as one of the nation's leading authorities on occupational safety and health, and is a frequent keynote speaker and lecturer on workplace safety, leadership development, and other labor and employment topics. Ed, thank you so much for lending your time and talent for us today. The floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this very topic that's going to be extremely, I think, timely this spring and this summer. As we see more heat-related illnesses occurring throughout the country. So that's why we decided we want to kind of do this early, so we can help you, give you the kind of the building blocks to be able to put in a workplace heat-related program to deal with heat-related illnesses and to avoid any type of fatalities and of course OSHA liabilities. So it is a very timely, and obviously Florida, this is an issue, extreme important issue in Florida. So we want to that's kind of why we want to do that. We're kind of going to talk a little bit about what is heat illness, talk a little bit about the OSHA guidelines and who's affected, identify symptoms, what to do, and some kind of preventive methods that we can implement, or that you all could implement at your work sites to address this particular problem. So let's keep moving along here, because we got a lot to cover here. If you're not aware, OSHA has been doing a rulemaking on heat illness, heat stress for both indoor and outdoor. Now that's very important. Most of what you've seen before has really been, and the states that have done, states like California, Oregon, Washington, who have done heat stress standards for their particular states. Most of it, they've just focused on outdoor. But this is now focusing, what OSHA has been doing is kind of doing both outdoor, because obviously that's where the big need is. But there's a lot of indoor issues dealing with heat stress and heat illness. And that's what they've been doing. So as you can see, this has been going on for a little while. They had an advance notice of proposed rulemaking back in October 2021. They did announce advance notice of proposed rulemaking. Comments were due by the 26th of January in 22. And they've held stakeholder meetings on May 2022. They've had multiple NACOSH meetings. NACOSH is an advisory committee dealing with general industry issues. So it's a 12-member board. They meet roughly 3 times a year, and they advise OSHA and the Secretary of Labor on OSHA matters there. So they've met 4 or 5 times actually on this rulemaking between February 22 and May 31st, 2023. Then you have the SBREFA. This is Small Business Review conducted by the Small Business Administration, and they They did their reviews from September 2023 to November 2023. They actually had several meetings, and basically this is part of the rulemaking process. It's actually required that the government, and this doesn't just apply to OSHA, this is across the board, that if the federal government is introducing or attempting to introduce a standard, a new standard that will have an economic impact on small businesses, that they have to go through a SBREFA review. And so it has to make a determination. There's a determination made what's the cost is going to be to employers. And if it meets a certain level, then you have to have a small business review by the Small Business Administration. And they actually solicit persons to small business employee members to be part of the panel that will review the standard and get their input. And then they also reach out to other small businesses around the country to get their input on this. So they do that. Then the SBREFA panel report came out in November 3rd of 2023. So now it's before where it is right now. It's been going back to OSHA. OSHA is reviewing the SBREFA report, make a determination if something in the standard should be modified or changed or removed. So you're going to see that. That's where we're kind of going from there. So I anticipate that they'll have something come out before the end of this administration, because it's a high priority for them. And so we'll see, though. I mean, it just depends, and we'll go from there. Now, you may have heard that Florida, that there were several counties, I believe, or cities that were trying to pass a local heat stress, heat illness standard. And then there was a bill in the legislature, which I understand passed, that basically said that had to be just there could only be one statewide standard, not a individual county or individual city standard, which makes a lot of sense. You can't, because if you're a business and you have, even if you're let's just take this, if you're a fast food place, and you're all throughout the whole state, you could potentially have to follow a whole series of different requirements depending on which county or which city you're located in. So it just made sense to have one state plan. So I think what they did, the legislation said that cities could not do it or counties couldn't do it, and that the state would be looking to do it. So I'm not sure. I hadn't heard if the governor signed it, but I understand it had passed the legislature. So anyway, so let's keep going on. But that's kind of where it is. And so the question was, well, what does this federal standard look like? Well, right now it's kind of looking at what, if you went on the OSHA website, which is www.osha.gov, and if you click on the A to Z, when you get on there, if you click to the A to Z index, you'll have an alphabet show up, and then click on H for heat, and you click on that, it can give you all the information. It also gives you recommendations on how to deal with heat stress and heat illness. And I think when it's all said and done, what is already on the website, and they have a special emphasis program on heat stress. And once again, what they do is basically saying you should do the things that we already have on our website, and we're going to talk about those because that's really the only thing you really can do. Now, some of the states have put out these heat stress standards. They kind of try to modify it by kind of dictating to employers as how many, depending on what your temperature is, how many breaks you have to take. And so when you get over 90 and getting close to 100, well, you're basically taking more breaks than you're actually doing work. So and that's why we don't want to. I think businesses will get coalescing behind any type of standard that. I think if OSHA comes out with a standard with something like that, I don't know if they will, though, that says that you have to take X number of breaks. I think they'll have break times, but to dictate that you have a certain amount of breaks you have to take when the temperature is a certain amount. We'll see if they come out with that. But if it does, then I suspect that you'll see business organizations following lawsuits on that standard too. So, but if you look on the OSHA website and you click on H and you get to the heat stress and heat discussion, you're going to see what they recommend. And my recommendation, and this is what we're going to talk about here, those are what you need to follow. And if you do that now and put together a plan, and we're going to talk about what should be in the plan at the end of the presentation, then you're going to see this is what you're going to have. And you're going to probably meet 99% of what OSHA may come out if they actually issue a standard. So we'll see how that goes there. But anyway, that's my recommendation on that. So let's keep moving along because we have a few things to do here. Okay, I just pushed the button. Okay. This was 2008 to 2014. They haven't updated this yet. That's only OSHA sometimes puts out some really great stuff and then doesn't update it. But this is where they had the report. OSHA had reports of heat-related fatalities among outdoor workers. Now that was not covering indoor. And when we talk about indoor, there's a whole series of things here that but mostly we're talking about indoor warehousing. We're talking about indoor actually construction too is another area like that. And some other stuff too, some other type of indoor work where employees have to wear certain heavy clothing or have to deal with something like electrical workers when they're working on high voltage. They have to wear the high cal suits, and so those things are very heavy, very thick, and very hot. So, but here gives you just an idea of what we've had there, and you notice there. Well, you would have thought, okay, California, yeah, obviously that's a Texas, some in Arizona, Texas a lot, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Then in Florida, you would have thought they probably had more in Florida than they did. And then surprisingly, now you get up into Ohio, Pennsylvania. And what happens, I think, and we're going to talk about this, the ones that you see up in the northern part, Wisconsin, well, when does it get hot there? But yet they've had heat-related fatalities. Well, it's because probably some places they're working in some different things. Now, I had a case once that we almost had a fatality of an employee working inside of a water tower, with doing a clean out of a water tower. Well, and this was in Florida though, and the temperature just shot up in the mornings once the sun came up. The temperature was very hot in there, and you could try to do whatever you could try to do, but it still would be very hot. So, and maybe that's where we're seeing some of these things in Wisconsin and Maine and or Massachusetts. So it's just kind of hard to tell why you see more of them up there, but clearly most of them are going to be down in the lower part of the country where the heat levels get up pretty quickly and start early in the spring. So we just want to kind of be looking at that. So, so what is heat illness? Well, we think we kind of knew that. As you note here, the body normally cools itself by sweating. And during hot weather, especially when you have high humidity, and you're going to see some charts. They're going to talk about high humidity and compare it to temperature and show what the real, with the higher the heat humidity, the actual temperature actually kind of rises. It's not a physical temperature, but it turns out to be basically what the body's being exposed to. And so with high humidity, you're not going to be able to sweat. Sweating is a mechanism that the body uses to cool itself down to keep from having heat illness. And of course, you can see here, we talk about heat range, and we'll talk in more detail about this and actually kind of talk about what is heat rash, what is heat cramp, heat exhaustion, stuff like that, heat stroke, and what causes those type of things. But that's the type of arrangements, and that's the kind of going from the least dangerous thing to the most dangerous thing. So. And if we have a heat stroke, and I think this is actually in several of the slides, heat stroke can result in death and require immediate medical attention. This is something, if you start seeing the symptoms of heat stroke, you can't wait on this one. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what are the examples or what are the things you need to know. Why is heat illness prevention important? Well, of course, obviously, we want to make sure that each one of our employees go home safe and sound, to each and every one of our employees go home safe to their families and loved ones. And it is important because it's occurring more. The temperatures are higher more. I mean, if you notice over the last couple of years, some people say, well, we're talking about global warming and everything. I never get into that type of analysis, but I mean, the temperature is what it is. I mean, and so we need to know what the temperature is, and this is something we need to do every day. This is not something we're going to be able to put off. And OSHA puts out actually an app on its website that you can pull up and download for free. And I would suggest that you pull up that heat stress, and we'll get to that, show you the graph on that. But it's important that you should have each one of your supervisors and managers. They should have that on their phone, especially if you're dealing with your people who are working outside, or if they're working in warehouses, or they're working in the other hot areas like indoor construction. A lot of times indoor construction is hot because they haven't implemented the air conditioning units yet. So it's like being outside, and actually even worse than being outside, because although you do get the shade, but sometimes that if you have walls and everything, it's not allowing air movement, then that's a problem that you wouldn't have as much as if you were outside itself. So OSHA has a general duty story, and not having a standard. OSHA has been citing, and last year they did a lot of issuing of citations under the general duty clause, and this is that this is not the next slide. We'll talk about general duty, but under this slide here, we're seeing while there may not be a heat illness or heat stress standard right now, there are things that are implemented here in the general industry standards that you need to address, because particularly this one here, the second thing listed down there, 1910-132D, mandates that employers to perform hazard assessments of workplaces, determine if the use of PPE is necessitated. Then you got to select it, you got to pay for it, and you make sure that it's properly fitted. That's your responsibility as an employer. What is really amazing, and this is I've been dealing with this, well, like I said, as Jason mentioned, I've been doing this for over 30 years, actually more like 40 years. But if I say I'm only been working 30 years, it doesn't make me look as old. But this is something that I have been preaching to all my clients for all this time, because this standard, this 1910-132D, has always been in place for near the beginning of the when the OSHA adopted the regulatory standards that were out there at the time in 1970-71. So, but you as an employer, and as I said, and dealing this with my clients, I have to tell you right now, 50% of the employers in the United States have not done this hazard assessment for PPE. Which is required in required in the stand 1910-132D, and actually the standard also requires. Now it's interesting. It does not require you to actually have a written hazard assessment. Don't ask me why, because I was still in college when they passed this thing. Why they didn't require a written hazard assessment, but they do require that you have a written certification that you've done the hazard assessment, which makes no sense whatsoever. But anyway, let me tell you this: my experience has been probably 70%. Even those ones that have done the hazard assessment, which is probably only 50% of the employers out there, 70% of the employers out there do not have a written certification that they've done the hazard assessment. So this is part of your homework assignment today, is to make sure that you do a hazard assessment of your workplace to determine what safety and health hazards, remember I say safety and health, because right here we're dealing with more of a health issue than a safety issue when we're talking about heat stress or heat illness. Then we need to determine what PPE we need to have to deal with that safety or health hazard, okay? And then we need to and make that determination. Now, you're basically doing a risk assessment. What are the hazards out there? What are the risk hazards for your employees that in anywhere out throughout your whole plant or your company? What are our safety and health risks? And do they necessitate? And how do we address those? Do we need to use PPE to address them? Which is in a lot of cases it is. And so once we do that, and I tell you, I would do a written hazard assessment. This idea about not having a written hazard assessment, it doesn't make any sense. So you want to have you want to do the written hazard assessment as to what hazards, and this is going to be one of them. Hey, we have high heat. Our employees are exposed to high heat. They're working outside. They're working in our warehouse. They're working in our water towers, cleaning out water towers, and and so what are we going to have to do? Well, we're going to have to, from a PPE standpoint, maybe we're going to have fans in there, some type of cooling system in there. And also, are we going to be providing what other type of PPE? Well, are we going to be providing the cooling vests, the cooling collars that they have out there? Are we going to be providing water? Are we going to provide the squishers? These are all kind of PPE things that we can do to address this particular health hazard dealing with heat stress or heat illness. So you need to do that. So that's part of your assignment after we finish up here, is to go ahead and do a hazard, make sure that you have a hazard assessment. Because I know the reason you want to do that too is because, I've been talking about this a long time, but I promise you, I've just noticed in this administration, the last couple of years, that is one of the things that they come out ask. They're going to come at the opening conference. They're going to ask you, we'd like to see, have you done a hazard assessment for PPE in your workplace? And let us see that. And do you have that? Of course, if they say, if you let us see it, you can say, well, I'm not required to have a written copy under the standard. But then they'll say, well, let me see your written certification that you have done all these things. And we just have all these slides available for download. And the answer is, Alice, yes. We're going to have all this will be available to you after the thing. So let's make sure we do our hazard assessment, and then let's make sure that we have that hazard written certification that we did the hazard assessment, who did it, when it was done. And then you don't have to worry about being caught up in this thing down the road there. So, and you'll be doing things that 70% of the other employers haven't done. So anyway, here's what I talked about, the general duty clause. Because the fact that we don't have a set heat stress, heat illness standard, OSHA can only cite it under, and it is a safety health hazard. OSHA is responsible for doing that. So, and as a general duty, we are, this is in the Act, Section 5A1 of the Act says, you must furnish each of his employees, every employer has an obligation to furnish each of his employees employment as a place of employment which is free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to his employees. Obviously, heat stress has serious hazard that can cause death or serious injury, physical harm. So we're covered under that. And let's go to the next slide. I think is, yeah. Here's what OSHA has to prove when they cite you under the general duty clause: that the employer failed to keep the work hazard which employees were exposed. Yes, they had heat stress and they didn't do anything. That's kind of what they would say. So, and then the hazard was causing or likely cause death or serious physical harm. Well, yes, we got plenty of data to show that people are getting seriously injured, seriously sick, and having physical impact on their bodies, and actually having and death is occurring because of this stuff. And so we have a hazard that can cause death or serious. So that's not a problem. So we got two things here already checked. Is the hazard recognized? Well, yes, it is now, because of all the focus that's been put on there. So yes, it is a recognized hazard. And is there a feasible means of abatement? Did it exist? This is what they had to show. Well, we're going to talk about all those physical means of abatement of the hazard that exists. And so the answer is yes. So citing an employer for a heat stress or heat illness violation under the general duty clause is an easy thing for them to do, because we already can show all these things. We just talked about it. So that's why we got to be careful. And if we get a general duty clause, one thing, it has to be a minimum of serious, because it requires, you have to have death or serious physical. So it has to be a serious violation. The penalty currently for serious is 16,000. The maximum penalty is 16,000. I think we're trying to remember 141. But then we also have if we knew about this thing and we knew about it, we had cases where we had people had heat stroke or heat stress or whatever. Then it's gonna be saying, and we did nothing. Well, that's willful. You knew the hazard and you did nothing about it. Well, that's willful. So now, and the willful penalty, the maximum willful penalty under OSHA would be a 161,000 and change, and I can never. I should write it down. I should have it on my camera hit here on my screen so I can see it every time. But you're talking about over $161,000 per citation for a willful violation. And if we've had a previous, of course, it's hard to get a previous repeat violation on general duty, but heat stress actually lends itself probably better than anything else to having a repeat violation there. So we have to be a little bit careful at it, but generally you don't want to see a repeat. So you would just be getting, obviously, if you had a serious heat stress violation in the past, and then you have another incident here where they find that you're not doing anything on it, then it would be willful, and they continually be willful from there on. So, 161,000 is not a small change anymore. So anyway, let's keep going. We got a lot to go here. All right, what industries are involved? Well, we talked a little bit about this. Operations with potential for inducing heat stress involving high temperatures. If you're, obviously foundries, talk about, high industry, radiant heat sources. Foundries have radiant heat sources too. I mean, they pour that stuff in there. Yeah, so I see a question: is this training for more employers or employees? It's really it's for employers, to answer your question, and we're going to talk about the things we need to do. If you have radiant heat sources, we're talking about things like foundries would have a high radiant heat sources there. High humidity. Well, of course, we're in Florida here. We get a lot of humidity down in Florida, and obviously, and you will see on the chart when we get to it in a minute, that the higher the humidity, the temperature is, the heat stress on that is much higher. As the temperature goes up and the humidity goes up, the heat stress goes up correspondingly. So direct contact with hot objects. Once again, we're talking about this. I've had a number of clients where they make plastic stuff, okay, and those extruders that are putting out a lot of heat. They're having contact with hot objects when it comes out of the mold. So you're dealing with that type of thing. And of course, strenuous physical activity, construction, obviously, you're going to be dealing with strenuous activity and things like that. So let's keep going. So we got there. Who is affected? Well, basically the same type of thing. Employees who work in hot or humid conditions, outdoor, obviously, construction, and then you're doing a lot of different things. You could be dealing with companies, cable companies, those type of things, or who are working outside all the time. You got your Federal Express and your UPS people are out there and driving around the hot without any heat. And that's one thing I've seen, that they've moved to including air conditioning in their trucks, because that's just, once again, is going to be one of the methods that we're going to be able to reduce and protect our employees from heat stress there. Working heavy tasks, once again, construction, those type of things. Wearing bulky protective equipment, clothing equipment. Obviously, when you're dealing with foundries, you're talking about people that are in heavy duty equipment, heavy duty clothing. We talked about the electricians who are dealing with high voltage. And they're going to be in very heavy clothing and all that. And when you have that type of thing, that bulky clothing keeps the heat in; it doesn't allow it out. So that's the thing. So, and then having humidity conditions which they're not acclimated to. And we're going to talk as one of the tools that we're going to try to do to avoid heat stress is acclimation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So let's see, what is important. Why is it important to prevent heat illness? It seems that the frequency of accidents in general appear to be higher in hot environments. Having serious injury or death occur at work affects everyone at the workplace. Workers suffering from heat exhaustion are at greater risk of accidents. They are less alert and confused. Mental confusion, tiredness, irritation may occur when they become overheated. Heat tends to promote accidents that occur because of sweaty palms, dizziness, fogging of safety glasses. And of course, employees can get burned from accident with hot materials such as steam or metal surfaces. So we have a whole series of things why we have to be protective against in order to prevent heat tests. This is very important to look at there. When heat stress doesn't kill immediately, it can shut down. And as we discuss the symptoms of this, of these different types of heat illnesses. Shuts down major body organs, cause acute heart, liver, kidney, and muscle damage, nervous system problems, and blood disorders. So, and even if we're able to protect those people and get them back to health, sometimes the damage could be long term. So we need to be very careful about that. That's very important that we understand that there. So, look at this first fact. I thought this was very interesting. Heat is the leading weather-related killer, ending more lives than hurricanes, flood, tornadoes, lightning combined. Extreme hot weather strains the heart and lungs, causes heart attacks, strokes, respiratory diseases. The CDC said they had 505 heat-related deaths in 2019. But the others estimate that's more like 5,600 deaths can be related to heat stress, and heat illness. So it is a very important thing there. Risk factors, we started talking a little bit about this, Dave. The risk factors, obviously temperature is one, and humidity. And you're going to see what I said before. We have this chart we're going to talk a little bit about. When you combine those two and how they move up and stuff, up and down, these are risk factors. If we don't have air movement, that's another reason, so that heat can build up on the body. And then radiate heat, it can be a lot of different things, but some of it's sun exposure too. So we need to and you can see all these different things, risk factors that NIOSH says that we need to be careful about with respect to heat related illnesses. So, and then other risk factors for heat stress. Person's age, obviously, the older they are, the more likely they're not going to be able to tolerate the heat. Physical fitness, people, and unfortunately in America, we have a problem with obesity, and people that are working heavy jobs a lot of times people working a lot of jobs are not just physically fit for and that's why you see a lot of heart attacks going on right now. Acclimation, this is a big issue. And I'm going to talk about it in a minute in more detail. And it's going to kind of shock you when you talk about acclimation. I mean, acclimation is really very much important to be able to do if you want to try to prevent these type of things from occurring. But it's not, it does put some stress on a business to be able to do that. The medical condition of a person obviously is going to be a work-related risk factor. What type of medications they are on, are they using alcohol, are they drug use, and even caffeine can be a kind of a work-related risk factor when dealing with heat stress. And of course, obviously a lot of people drink coffee during the day, and so that's loaded up with caffeine. I kind of do my Coca-Cola here, as you can see. So I guess that's where I'm getting my caffeine. Anyway, so it's obviously all over in the workplace with respect to having caffeine available. So we need to be there to be able to address this particular issue. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, that second bullet, circulates increased skin, and that's how, and sweat evaporation is the way the body handles heat. Heart rate increases at the same time too. So you can see, and this is a thermogram taken of a person. You can show the different areas where heat is going to be seen there in the body. Of course, then we got how the body cools itself. As I mentioned before, sweating is one way. Conduction here, where heat is directly transmitted through the body and off of the body there too. Convection, this is where we have heat transfer of heat, and as the body pulls up the hotter fluids, the blood in the body, it's going to bring it closer to the surface, and that's how it cools off there. And then radiation is the process where heat waves are transmitted through the body to cooler areas. So we have that thing also occurring. So we need to recognize that too. So let's keep going here. Acclimation. All right, now I've kind of built this up, so I guess we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about this acclimation. What should we make sure that we're doing with our employees? Well, if we have a situation where, obviously, if you start an employee during the wintertime, you're not going to be doing much acclimation, to be quite honest. I've done even in Florida, although it may be in Florida but some parts are maybe lower down in the lower part of Florida in the Miami area type of that, where it never gets really that cool down there. So, but habit acclimation reduces the risk of dehydration and salt loss. And salt loss is really important because as you lose more salt, you start to cramp up more frequently. So, and I remember I actually swam in high school and college, and so I know a lot about this about cramping up here. And I remember when I was in college swimming, I would sometimes take as many as 10 salt tablets a day, because if I didn't, I'd be cramping up while I was working out. And that's what happens here. You never, in the swimming is you don't ever notice, you don't think you're sweating, but you are. And you don't see that you're losing bodily fluids or body and salt. And so, but sweating and evaporation coolant becomes more efficient as when we do acclimation. You kind of learn to build up this thing, and salt loss becomes efficient. You're losing less salt. Core body temperature is maintained as you do the acclimation. It's reducing the strain on the heart. Blood circulation in the skin becomes more effective, and of course, your recovery heart rate improves. So these are the things that acclimation actually helps us do. That is a positive thing, so which we really need to have. So let's go to the next slide here. Preventing illness. This was a slide. I think this was one that put out by OSHA. Look at this thing here next to knees of work. Nearly 3 out of 4 fatalities from heat illness happen during the first week of work. So that's why this is important. And they basically say it's going to take you a tolerance to build up your tolerance to heat by increasing intensity, i.e. exposure, by 20% each day. So now we're going to start to see, well, what you were talking about, Ed, about this does have some certain impact on business operation. But here, you want to make sure that we have people drinking cold water even when they're not 30, that we're resting, we're taking breaks in shade or cool areas, wearing hats or dresses for the heat, whatever we need, looking out for others if we see them. And sometimes people have heat stress and certain types of heat illness that they don't wreck themselves, but you notice that they do. They're not moving like they were. They're kind of talking kind of funny, whatever. So that's why this is all important, that we have other people explain this. Now, here's the kicker for acclimation. OSHA basically takes the position it takes roughly 10 to 14 days for one person to be acclimated to hot environment. So so we're increasing exposure to hot environment from over 7 to 14 days. That's a long period of time, and especially when you're talking about the beginning point. You want to start off by avoiding prolonged exertion during hottest times of the day, and schedule heavy excursion for the cooler parts of the day. And once again, this is part of our heat stress program for our company. We need to be looking at that. Most companies probably can't kind of schedule things so that it's, people are not overexerting themselves during the hottest part of the day. If we're inside and we're air conditioning, well, that kind of takes a lot of the pressure off us there, but we need to understand that this happens there. So we need to be able to kind of have a schedule, if we can, to be able to do the heavy working in the cooler parts of the day, beginning of the day, the work day. And some companies actually change their schedules where instead of starting at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, they're starting at 6 o'clock. So that the employees are actually working more in the cooler part of the day than they are normally. So now, when we have employees that we've already have worked for us for years or had been acclimated before, it's still going to take, if they're off for a week or more, it's going to take them 2 or 3 days to get reacclimated to the work thing. So we need to be thinking about that too. And we need to, once again, this is something we need to include in part of our heat stress or heat illness policy. So we want to focus on that. Consuming a consumption of water is very important, and it's sometimes hard. Some people think are not big drinkers. I mean, of water, I should say that. But we should have 8-ounce cup of water cool water or electrolyte replacement every 15 to 20 minutes. So we're talking about 4 cups of water an hour. That's a lot. And you're going to say, well, geez, how are they going to be able to do that, or what's going to make that? So, but we need to explain to our employees why we're asking them to do this. And once again, that part of this may be part of our heat stress or heat illness policy of what we're going to be requiring. And if we see people that are working in more stressful jobs at physical exerting and are doing a lot of sweating, then we need to make sure that maybe they're actually taking in more water every hour than just four cups of water. So in order to avoid heat stress setting in. If the sweat is not trapped, physiological monitoring, if the sweat's not trapped within the clothing, then we can monitor body weight, which is it's a little bit hard to do if they're wearing certain things. One thing that you can is always going to be a determination, or at least a indicator, and something we can tell our employees and we can show them this, is that as the urine color turns darker, it should be pale yellow. If it turns darker, that's telling us that we're losing bodily fluids within our bodies, and we're not keeping up with where we should be. So that's very important there. And we need to make sure that our employees understand that. We'll show you example. Here's the example here. Pale yellow shows where it's hydrated, but you can see where it's going here as you become dehydrated. Now it becomes that darker urine, especially if it gets down to here, the lower one. You really have. This is when you just basically say, okay, if you see this, if your urine is this color, you need to take a break, get in the shade, get in air conditioning, start drinking, not just 1 cup of water, but a couple cups of water to make sure that you get rehydrated. So that's very critical importance to that. So, but this is something we could give to our employees. There's nothing wrong with it. So, rest breaks and shade. Once again, all these things that we're talking about now, this is on the OSHA website. This is the things that they're saying. This is the things that I think you're going to see in any type of standard that comes out, because basically there's not much more you can do. You're not going to be having people, you're not going to have people going to get IVs to get fluids put in. Just, it might, if they get serious, if it gets to a serious point, you're going to probably want that, but that's going to be done maybe by, if you have an in-house nurse or some type of physical physician there, that may be what they do to stave off, to quickly replace the fluids in your body. But these are the things we need to be looking at. Once again, the breaks allow us for the blood to flow and the skin to kind of cool down again. Eliminates the heat in the body from prolonged muscle use. Good breaks are good for the heart, allows the heart rate to cover back to where it was. And, rest and shade helps the cooling, especially if the air movement would cool air. So, and so to say that and one of the things I used to get questions about is, this was a number of years ago, about heat stress, when I talking about shade, getting the shade. And they say, well, we don't have any shade available. Well, with these pop-up tents that are all over the place, there's no reason that we can't put them out there. We're not talking about a lot of money or anything else either. So we need to be looking at that. They need to have at least shade. Get out of that sun for a short period of time, several times during the workday. So, all right, what are the heat-related illnesses? So, we're going to talk about heat rash, heat cramps, syncope. I had to put that in my cell phone site to get this, to say how to say that, syncope. And syncope is a temporary loss of consciousness as a result as a blood pressure drops. That's what heat syncope is. So, and then we got obviously heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and this is the one I always had tried, rhabdomyolysis, I think is how you rhabdo, which is the breakdown of muscle tissue. This occurs earlier on. Syncope occurs down the road when you're really down. You're down when you start having people pass out. You're way down the road, and you got to start. This is where we're starting getting into, ambulances and emergency hospital stay there. So, but rhabdomyolysis is a breakdown of muscle tissue that releases a damaging protein into the bloodstream and impacts negatively on the muscle. So, so we need to understand these different types of heat illnesses, and what we have to do, when to report. So let's keep going here. So we're going to cover a lot more of that. How are we doing on time? Well, we're doing pretty good. All right. So here's the less severe to the most severe. Okay. Heat rash obviously is the least of it, and it's interesting when I go out and work outside, and if I have when I got my sneakers on and I got my white socks on there, if it's hot out, I'm out there in the wild there, I end up getting heat rash on my legs, on the lower part of my legs. So and that's because it's clogging the pores, and it causes the rash. So that's what it is. But here you can see, so we go from heat rash to heat cramps to heat exhaustion to heat stroke. And then we have obviously syncope is when we become unconscious. And so we go here from discomfort of heat rash all the way to when we have a heat stroke. Obviously, the possibility of death is fairly high. So we have to be really good, because your organs start shutting down here when you get into the heat exhaustion, and then in the heat stroke, you're really having some real serious problems there dealing with that. So. All right, heat index. This is the other thing we've been talking a little about, or I've been talking a lot about there. Here's your chart. I'm trying to remember if OSHA is the one to put this out. I won't remember where I got it. Anyway, it is there. So, but look at this here. If you're here's the temperature here. Here's the air temperature going from 70 to 110. And living here in Atlanta, we do, on a very rare occasion, get up to 110. But look what happens if we have zero humidity. Even when we're at 110, we're down. The impact on our body is a temperature of 99 degrees. So it does. But as our humidity goes up, we have 0, we're 99. We got 10% at 110, we're at 105. We got 20%, we're at 112. So now we're above what the heat temperature is. And look at this. You get down to the 90% humidity, and this is not unusual down south, particularly and Florida particularly too. We're running into 40, 50, 60, 70%. Sometimes we're at 90% humidity. Well, if we're at 90% humidity and we're at 100 degrees, we're really showing it as 170. So obviously we got some serious issues. So once we get into this red area here, that's why we want to have that heat stress app from OSHA on our website, on our supervisors' cell phones, so they can pull this up and they can know exactly when they start work. Let's look at what's the heat stress today, right now. What is it? What is showing up? Okay, as we're doing our toolbox talks or whatever we're doing, maybe we're doing a JSA on the jobs we're going to be due today. Well, we want to put that in there. Here's the heat stress index right now. We got here right now based on the app. We can anticipate, and we're going to keep monitoring that. We're going to have a good idea about what it potentially is going to be. So and if we know we're at a certain temperature here, then we're going to know, well, we're going to have to start having more drink breaks. We're going to do more breaks. We're going to do making sure people are drinking more water, maybe doing the squinchers, doing with all the electrolytes and stuff. And all this is very important to be able to deal with that. So that's why we have this particular chart. I think it gives you a good idea about what we need to be recognizing here, that we can get into some areas too. Even when we get into the 90s, there's areas here that we can get some serious temperatures. It could impact, the body would be interpreting at a much higher temperature. Even we're at 90, we're at 100% humidity, we're really looking at 133 degrees. So we need to be recognize these, and we need to be discussing these every day to our employees, and so we can show that we recognize this issue, and we're making sure that our employees are staying safe and not being exposed to heat stress or heat illness, and keep it away from getting heat stroke, and maybe we get heat cramp, maybe have muscle cramps or that, but we want to make sure we're not getting up. We don't want to get to the we want to get back to where was that one there? Let me go back. Yeah. Well, we want to keep down here at the lower end, the less severe areas. We don't want to get up to the heat exhaustion or heat stroke, because when you get there, that's when the body starts shutting down, organs start shutting down, and things like that. So we never want to be in that situation. So we need to be careful about that. Keep going. All right. Heat index 90 to 100, sunstroke, heat cramps, heat exhaustion are all possible with prolonged exposure. And obviously, most employees are going to be working 8 hours a day. If we go to, there's some talk about, I know Bernie Sanders wants to go to 4 12-hour days. Well, that sounds nice, but unfortunately, that may expose our employees to a greater likelihood of having some type of sunstroke or heat stroke or whatever. So we need to be concerned about that. Heat index 100, 105, 100. We can have heat stroke, sunstroke, heat cramps, heat exhaustion, heat stroke possible with prolonged activity, physical activity, and of course, heat when we have an index of 130 or higher. And that, as you saw, when combining the temperature with the humidity, that's not hard to do. Then we could have, once we get to that, we could have the potential for heat stroke or sunstroke or imminent. And as a result, we could be looking at somebody being seriously injured or possibly die because of that type of situation. So we want to do that. So, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit about health problems associated with these type of things here. So let's kind of just go here. Heat cramps, heavy sweating cause the drain. We talked about this body from salts out of the body, which cannot be simply replaced with drinking water. So we need to be looking at, are we providing more maybe electrolytes to be able for employees to drink so they can replace the salts in their body. We always, I don't know if you understand this, but it was, we know what Gatorade is. Well, Gatorade, why is it called Gatorade? Because it was developed at the University of Florida where the Gators are. And they developed this for their football team because they were having cramps and everything. That's why it is. So they developed this thing, the Gatorade, for cramps, heat cramps from exertion while they were playing, particularly in the summertime, and early on, and even into the fall, they're still doing that. So that's how that all got developed. But we want to move them. They start having cramps in their arms, legs, stomach while on the job, or even that later at home. And this is something that we need to, as part of our program, we need to tell our employees, if you start feeling any of these symptoms, cramps, painful cramps in arms, legs, stomach, while you're on the job, or if it comes later on in the home, you need to notify your supervisor about this right away. We want to know about this. We're not trying to monitor what you're doing at home, but we just want you to make sure that we did it. So we want to make sure they have loose clothing, drink cool water, lightly soluble water, commercial fluids. That's the Gatorade type of thing. And they should probably be seen if they're getting cramps, and if it's pretty bad, then they really need to seek medical attention if the cramps don't go away. So that's very important. So fainting. If anybody faints, I don't care what it is, at work, well, first of all, if someone becomes unconscious at work, that is a recordable incident on the OSHA 300 logs. Okay, that's an absolute. So you need to understand that. But that's just the least of the things here. If someone's fainting, then it may be because they may be getting close to being heat stressed. They may get heat stroke. It should be heat stroke. So we need to be familiar with that. Of course, I don't know if you've ever seen this. You probably have. This happens up in Washington at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. There's they used to. A long time ago, they used to stand guard and they would stop. They how they march back and forth? Well, they used to kind of stay there longer without moving. That causes them to, that they were finding where people the soldiers were fainting because of the heat stress on their bodies. So you need to be constantly moving there. You see it at games where the band is playing around and they're standing in one position. That's what you have to be a little bit careful about there. So we want to make sure if you have it, if they're feigning though, this is a serious issue and you have to take it seriously. If I have a feigning, I don't care if they say, well, he's been just standing there and that's why I fainted. My feeling is you need to just go ahead and send them to he need to go to the emergency room or urgent care or whatever we can get them quickly to, in order to determine what happened here. Why did this happen? What do we have? They can do blood sampling and stuff like that. They'll do urine tests. They'll be able to tell you all those things about if you're dehydrated, over dehydrated, and then they can administer what they need to do to take care of it. So we don't have it. The key here is, obviously if somebody faints, something's wrong. So we need to deal with that. But we want to make sure that we get the medical attention they need right away, so that they don't develop other things. We don't want to have any damage to any body organs, which can occur in this type of situations. So we talked about heat stress. We talked about the sweat ducts becoming clogged, and that's a result. And it's uncomfortable. It takes a while. It took me 3 days to get rid of the heat rash that I had. So, but it wasn't a big deal. But once again, I probably should have been drinking more water while I was working outside. So heat exhaustion, a large amount caused by they have a large amount of fluids, loss of fluids by sweating, excessive loss of salt. And what are the signals? What are the symptoms about this? We see somebody sweating, really heavy sweating. Their skin is cool and moist. Their body temperature is over 100 degrees, 100.4 degrees. Have a weak pulse, normal or low blood pressure, mood changes, confused, irritable, thirsty, blurring sight, panting, or breathing rapidly. Obviously, we have those situations. Look what we got here. Get medical help immediately. These are just, we've had this stuff out there for so long, this heat stress stuff, and we kind of become, somewhat numb to what's really going on. But we need to realize that heat stress heat exhaustion particularly can be a real killer if we don't get the attention that we need to do. So we need to make sure that we're following those type of when we see these type of things, we need to make sure that our managers and supervisors, they need to understand this is what heat exhaustion is. This is here's some of the signs and symptoms. If you see any of your employees these symptoms, you get them inside your office or get them in, if in a construction site, get them in the truck with the air conditioning running full blast. Okay. And let's get them to the emergency care or the emergency room, and see that they have the help they need. Make them drinking water as you're taking them there, whatever we need to do. But we don't, of course, you possibly could have if this is something that you need to realize that, we have this potential all the time, or particularly in the summertime, maybe our supervisors have one of those thermometers that they can just shoot straight at a person, so we can know, well, look, you got over 100 degree temperature. This is not normal. Over 100 degrees is not normal. 99, okay, somewhat normal, but not really normal. But 100 degrees or higher, we got issues we need to address. So let's go ahead and let's be able to do that. So, and once again, all this stuff that we can put into our program on how we're going to handle heat stress here for our people. Symptoms, signs and symptoms: heat stroke, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, dry, hot skin, very high body temperature. You're in the 102 to 103 degrees. You got to take that real seriously. Heat exhaustion, moist, clammy skin, normal or subnormal temperature. So, but either one of these, still, we don't want this to keep going on. We want to stop the progression of this. Notice the heat stroke. You're not sweating on the other side. On heat exhaustion, they're still sweating, but on the heat stroke, they're not. And if you see that stuff and it's hot out there and they're hot, their body temperature hot, we need to move quickly on that. I can't emphasize that more importantly. So let's keep going. Heat exhaustion, first aid. We got to move. If we have heat exhaustion, we're going to move the patient to a cool place, keeping the person lying down, and elevate his legs elevated about 8 to 12 inches. this is, and once again, we're trying to prevent any type of stroke coming in there, obviously. Cool the victim down, applying cold packs, wet towels, cloths, a fan. Give him hot, cold water if he's conscious, he or she's conscious. If no improvement, we're going to, in 30 minutes, you know, I don't know if I'd actually wait that long, because we have these type of situations. But you know, that's kind of what the general recommendations are. But if you don't see anything improvement, if people are just still there and they're not doing it, it's coming in 20, 25 minutes, 30. I'm already there. I'm already having the ambulance here. Sorry, it's just the way it's going to be, because we want to make sure, we want to protect our employees. So, and once again, our supervisors and managers need to understand this. You know, it's not that we're trying to make them EMTs or anything else like that, but we need to. Heat stroke obviously can kill a person quickly. Once the body uses up all its water and salt, sweating ceases. That's why you don't see any sweating. Temperature rises, body temperature gets over 105. That's a danger. I mean, that's where all kinds of stuff, your brain is impacted, your body organs are impacted. So, you know, but these are the things we're going to see: confusion, distress, strange behavior, red, hot, dry, red skin, rapid pulse, headache, dizziness, may pass out and have convulsions. I mean, once again, we're not going to wait. You can't wait to get to these points, this type of thing here. And your managers and the supervisors need to understand it. But once again, once I said earlier, you got someone who is becoming unconscious. The ambulance is being called right then. You really just can't wait till that anymore. So first aid, we can put them in a cool place, remove heavy cold, cool the victim down, whatever needs, such as ice packs in the area, neck, armpits, groins, wet towels. Hypothermia, you got to get down to 102. If it's at 105, things are impacted. Our body organs are being, and the brain are negatively impacted at 105. So we need to be doing that. Slightly elevate the head and shoulders. Once again, seek a medical attention cure. So care for seizures if they occurred, and we need to know how to do that. Look at this last one here. Do not use aspirin or acetaminophen when we have what we think might be a heat stroke issue there. So, all right, let's keep going. Where we got to keep going. Fluid loss of the performance. 2%. If we have 2% loss of fluids, we have impaired performance. 4% capacity for work, muscular work declines. 6% loss of fluids, heat exhaustion. 8% hallucinations. 10% circulatory collapse and heat stroke. So we need to, once again, we're not going to deal with we're going to deal with these things, this type of thing. We start seeing things up here, 2%, but we see impaired performance. We see sometimes the person's not right. Something's not right with Joe. So he's having some problems. We can't put our finger on it maybe, but we know that something's not right. We're either taking them to the emergency care, or we're calling the ambulance, one of the two. So, and how to keep the how to keep working muscles working when the heat is on. We're going to be avoiding all these type of things. Once we get over 90 degrees, we're going to be scanning, and that's what that heat app is going to provide you notice on those type of things. When you get to a certain temperature degrees, you're going to get notifications on those type of things on the cell phones. That's why your supervisors and managers need to have that on that there too. So let's see. Take time to allow the body to adjust to high heat. When we talked about acclimation, and some people, I've had clients when I talk to them, I said, well, you need to get to do this acclimation thing there. And when because you're doing your people in high, and especially your new people coming in. And it's a little hard to understand for a lot of clients to understand why that's important, but it really is. And we need to make sure that we understand, we know that. And so we need to have that high humidity right before the exertion begins, but it's given some time just to get out there. But sometimes you don't have that opportunity because you're starting work earlier, particularly if you're in construction. Most construction sites are starting at 7:30, some starting at 6. So it's not hot. The heat of the day comes later on by midday. So, that's when you need to, part of your plan should probably include those type of things. Once again, is how we're going to handle as for those people that are not been acclimated we need to make sure that they understand, okay, or as part of our plan, okay, for those people who are new to the system, we're going to make sure that when we get to a certain temperature, they're taking more breaks, they're taking more, make sure they're consuming more water or whatever fluids there. So we need to look if they're wearing protective clothing, how do we deal with that? We need to understand that if the jobs that they have to perform require heavy clothing, we need, okay, so that in the summertime or spring, summertime, early fall, we're still dealing with some high temperatures, and so we need to make sure that we're spending more time, that they have a period of time where they can get into a cool area, can maybe remove their clothing for a short period of time before they go back in. So once again, this is kind of something you're going to have to kind of suit, and condition towards your particular operations, so to know what you need to do from that thing. So you have to look at that, because only you are going to know exactly what is the type of situation you're dealing with at your workplace. So, and what type of PPE clothing are you requiring? And if we know we're requiring them to wear heavy clothing that's not going to be conducive to keeping the person cool, then we need to put things in place to ensure that we recognize this issue, and then we're trying to address that issue, however we do so. Once again, don't depend on thirst or sweat as an indication of escalated body heat. So be aware of the temperature, and once again, we want to be aware of the temperature and humidity. That's why that app is so important. Drinking fluids with electrolyte at regular intervals is also important. And once again, we need to put that in a program, our heat stress program, our heat illness program, whatever you want to call it. And we got to make sure that employees understand, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're requiring this. This is why, and the supervisors need to know, this is why you want to have it. Because you want to protect your employees. You want your employees to be there at work and be able to do the work. And if we don't follow this stuff, they're not going to be able to do the work, and they may get sick, real sick, and they may be out, or they may die. Either way, it's going to impact the companies on a lot of different levels, including productivity. So let's make sure we continue to look at that there. So we got to know the symptoms of heat stroke. We've already provided all that, and respond quickly. That's the most important thing, is being able to respond quickly. And that's why we need to make sure our supervisors and managers are trained on these issues. They need to understand this is what you need to be on the lookout when the temperature. And if you have it on their app, that information is going to be there too. But the app is going to give them updates and ping them as to know, hey, we're at a certain heat stress level right now. This is what we need to be we need to be making sure our employees are doing. And then they can be out. They need to know, you got to go follow that instructions, because you don't want to lose anybody. And I've done over 400 OSHA fatality investigations in my career. And I can promise you that this is not something you want, and your managers or supervisors want to be involved with. It is not a pleasant thing. It impacts the companies more than most people think about. But so they need to understand, this is important. This is important to us as a company. This should be important to you as the manager or supervisors. So, and make sure you're doing those things. Let's just not just wait till they can get till we get to a point where they're fainting, because we've missed the boat. If we get to the point where somebody's fainting, or is acting irrationally, then we've not been paying attention. And so we need to, and that's why, and we need to have, like I say, that's why you have to put these type of things in a policy. So it's more easier to prevent heat stress injuries than to recover from them, which is really true. It is depending on the severity of the heat stress on the employee's body, they could be out for days, weeks, months. So we need to understand that this really is important, and why we want that there too. So I've mentioned electrolytes a bunch of times here. This was something I saw that how they correlate electrolytes being similar to antifreeze in a car, so that without antifreeze or the proper mixture of antifreeze, the car quickly overheats and during intense use. And what happens? It stalls out. The engine seizes, and now you basically may have to actually replace the motor, because it's the block may break. Whole series of things there on that. So we need to understand that. So without electrolytes, the body responses are similar. The harder it is to work, the quicker it becomes overheat, and then serious injuries to body organs, the brain, all that stuff that becomes there. So we want to make sure, switcher has been seen to be the big drink of that. We're seeing more and more being used, or I'm seeing more and more with our clients that they're using that, because it is a good way to completely replace lost fluids, lost salts and stuff like that. So that's what it was designed to do. And they've been successful at it too. So anyway, the do's are drink plenty of water, take breaks in cool, shady air, watch for symptoms of heat stress, both for yourself and coworkers. Don't ignore the symptoms of heat stress. Don't try to get a suntan while you're working. I look back when I was in when I was in college there. I remember I worked as a lifeguard and the swim team coach at a couple of clubs when I was in college, and I still remember that. I remember one time I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I was in school. I was going to be the coach and then a lifeguard at this. It was a club. It wasn't a country club. It wasn't that fancy, but I remember they asked me, because I understood pools, they asked me to kind of get their pools cleaned up and started to get ready for the summer. And I remember, and this was probably in May, I'm out there cleaning the pool, and I'm just wearing shorts, nothing else. And I don't even know if I had suntan lotion on. I don't know, but I was trying to get a suntan while I was working, and I don't think it really worked too well in the long run. So, and we don't want people to try to keep up with the rest of the crew if they are feeling ill. And they need to understand, if you're feeling ill, you need to let me know. That's what the supervisor should be conveying, that I care about you, and I want to make sure that you are know that I'm here. There's nothing wrong with you saying that you're not feeling well, you need a break, whatever. That's fine. Just let us know. So we pretty much covered all these things. Limit the time in the heat, water, rest, shade, drink water, rest, shade, breaks. So we got all that covered there. How you can minimize heat exposure. Once again, we get here. We've got to have a plan in place, and this is kind of the things that we want to look at. And it's not that much. Basically, we want to talk about the purpose of the heat illness prevention was developed to protect supervisors and workers, which provide training and tools to help them protect from heat-related illness. This covers all work sites, and that we want you to protect against. We're going to do training and who's responsible. Everyone needs to know who has responsibility there. The employees will be trained on the procedures they're supposed to adhere to, and make sure that they realize that this is we don't have a no tolerance with people exposing themselves to heat days. And then also that they're required to notify their supervisors of any concerns they have regarding any type of issues that they're having occurred there. Main elements of a heat illness prevention plan: train workers and supervisors, monitor working conditions. All these things will be in the policy itself. Conduct heat hazard assessments when temperatures exceed 70. Implement a heat illness prevention strategy. Plan for heat-related medical emergencies. We should know, our supervisors and managers need to know, if this happens, who's going to be responsible for notifying, who's upper management, who's going to be responsible for getting their person, start trying to provide relief to the employee. Are we going to move them? Are we going to take them to the emergency room? Are we going to have an ambulance be brought in to be able to move this? So all these things would have to be talked about as that part of that procedure. So, and with that, we've kind of finished up. I know there's a lot of information to deal with, but it is important. And to be quite frank, it doesn't really matter, well, I guess it would matter to a certain degree, but whether or not OSHA has a heat standard to me doesn't, we got to be concerned with our employees, because if nothing else, we want to make sure that our operations continue to go. And if we start having people getting heat illness, heat stress, and not being able to come to work, or, or having emergencies right there on the site, that could be very expensive. So we want to make sure to include all have that. And that's why we need to have a policy in place. There's not a lot of companies that have policies. Like most of my clients do have policies in place now, because I've been kind of insistent upon that. I mean, it's just something we just need to recognize. This is something we need to deal with. You don't think about it too often, but it really is something we really need to be looking at. So, well, Jason, I think, like I say, we're here at the question place. I don't know if there are any questions or not, but I'll just answer. We can go from there.
Yep. Yeah, we got a couple questions. Not sure if this was answered before when I might have stepped out, but is the training for heat stress for employers or employees on how to prevent heat stress, or is it for both?
Well, I would say it's for both. I mean, we got to have our policy, but then we have to make sure that our managers and supervisors understand the heat stress and heat illness. What are the signs and symptoms? And they should be on the lookout. That's part of their job, I think. It's not that, they have to worry about production. They need to make sure that the quality of the product is getting good. They need to make sure that the employees are being safe also. And part of that being safe means that you got to make sure that they understand, that we're first of all, we're monitoring. We make sure we know what the signs and symptoms are, so we can watch them. But the employees also need to know. And it may be that Joe, who's actually having these symptoms, recognizes them, because he may not. But Mary, who's working right next to him, sees what's going on with Joe and say, Joe is not doing good here. He's having some issues dealing with heat stress. That's why we need to train all our employees, because we want them to be able to say that. So Mary then now is talking to Leslie, who's the supervisor, and says, Leslie, Joe, I'm a little concerned about Joe, because he's doing some funny things here, and I think he's having some issues in heat stress here, and we need to look at that. So we want our supervisors and managers to be trying to observe people when they're doing their jobs, to see if they see any signs of heat stress. I mean, it ties into a bunch of things, and it's. I didn't say being a supervisor is an easy thing, or a manager being a easy thing, because you're monitoring all kinds of things. You're not only do heat stress and heat illness, but are they using drugs? Is there some type of impairment going on here that we're seeing? And if you have that drug use too, that's a part of the problem that enhance the potential for heat illness or heat stress. So we need to be a little bit forward. And if they do use drugs, and then maybe they're not sensitive to what's going on to themselves, and they're not going to be able to recognize that. So that's why, we have a lot of things we put on our supervisors, no doubt about it. But this is an important one, particularly in the summertime. We're going to have this issue we need to address.
So would you say that it's obviously employees that are exposed to, or potentially exposed to, heat stress illnesses, it's required for them to be trained, but suggested for all employees to be trained on heat stress, even if those employees are not part of the potential hazards, so they could be aware?
Yeah, I think we want to have, it's part of our overall training. I don't see that it could be added on as part of a training program if they're working in an office, air-conditioned office. Yeah, them possibly having heat stress is going to be kind of low. But then again, they may be out and maybe they go and visit our production area or production plants and stuff like that. They should be also seeing that too. And they need to be, it may be put in a situation where that normally they're not, exposed to some type of heat stress or heat illness, but maybe just part of their job is they go to other places and may have that exposure.
All right. Got a few more that just came in. Is it required that your employer conduct the WBGT survey?
You conduct the what?
The WBGT survey.
Is that the wet bulb survey?
Yeah.
I don't, no, there's not, no, OSHA doesn't, I don't think anything that OSHA requires them to do that. It is a good way to be able to tell heat stress or not heat stress, but the wet bulb test tells you about the heat levels and gives us an idea, but I'm not, I don't know where, I mean, OSHA talks about it in their technical manual. They talk about how to use the wet bulb test. But obviously, a lot of that comes into like foundries and stuff like that that you have to do. But I'm not sure that OSHA requires as a general industry employees. Generally, I would say no. I can't remember if we're dealing with foundries and stuff that might somehow be required, but generally, I'd say no.
Okay. Another one is, do you have the reference for the hazard assessment certification?
Yeah, 1910, 29 CFR 1910, 132. Well, let's get it right here. 132D. Let's just look at it again. Where's 132? Oh, here it is. Put my stuff on. 132D. I'll read it to you here. 132D. In hazard assessment and equipment, this is under personal protective 132, 1910, 132 is the PPE standard. And D says employers shall assess the workplace to determine if hazards are present or likely to be present, which necessitates the use of personal protective equipment. If such hazards are present or likely to be present, employers shall select and have the affected employees use the type of PPE that will protect an affected employee from hazards identified in the hazard assessment. I, communicate selection decisions to each affected employee, and I, select PPE that properly fits each affected employee. So this is one, those are under section 1. 2, the employer, this is still under D. D2, the employer shall verify that the required workplace hazard assessment has been performed through a written certification that identifies the workplace evaluated. The person certifying the evaluation has been certifying that the evaluation has been performed. The date or dates of the hazard assessment, and which identifies the document as a certification of hazard assessment. This is I forgot about that. This is a funny thing. You don't have to have a written hazard assessment, but you have to have a certification. You have to have a written certification. And the written certification has to be, at the top has to say certification of hazard assessment. Actually tells you what you have to have at the name of the document. So I forgot all about that. I love that. It just amuses me so much sometimes, I think.
Let's see. Well, it looks like some of the folks here are doing it in the chat in regards to the app name for that heat index. Looks like there's a couple different sources: WeatherBug, the NIOSH OSHA heat app
Yeah,
would have that heat index.
right. I have that. Yeah, that's the one I'm familiar with, the NIOSH OSHA.
Okay.
And it can, like I say, it gets put on your cell phone.
Yep. And basically, being that OSHA is currently working on a federal standard for heat stress as of right now, anything that's related to hazards associated with heat stress, no written programs, lack of training, things of that nature, OSHA can issue a Section 5A1 violation. Correct?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, the last couple of years, they've been very during the summer. They've issued a lot of general duty heat stress. I guess they call it violation citations for violating.
All right. It looks like that's all the questions that we
All
have.
right. Well, it's just in time.
Yes, sir. Well, Ed, first and foremost, cannot thank you enough for leading this webinar today. I know that everybody is definitely going to leave here with a lot more knowledge and be better prepared in order to establish a safer and healthier workplace when it comes to heat stress. So I just want to thank everybody here that joined us this morning. And again, you have my contact info. You have Ed's contact info right there as well. So if there's anything that we can do, you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And for everyone here on the line that's going to be joining us at our conference, we're looking forward to seeing you. And thank you so much for your time. So Ed, you're the man. I definitely appreciate you, buddy. And I just want to wish everyone out there a beautiful day and a safe week. And we'll be seeing you again next time. So thank you so much and God bless.
Thank you for attending.